Well, with the rush we had at the end of the show, I don't think either party had a chance to really present itself. So,
yeah, I think that's probably
meaning
true.
you and I. So,
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed Billy's conversation. That was fantastic for me.
Oh yeah,
regarding logic and the lack of science and. For instance, I just want to bounce this off of you guys. My assumption or my definition of supernatural is above natural, so it has no relation to the natural world. But what do you guys think of that definition?
Can you clarify what you mean by above?
Oh, like if you took the Latin root word of it, super literally means above. I think.
So do you mean...
It's above being natural.
Do you mean somehow better in quality, or do you mean somehow elevated in height?
It's outside of the natural world, so therefore we as humans living in the natural world cannot be in touch with any supernatural. It is just a part of our mind that we don't have any tacit understanding of.
Okay, so as a quick aside, I'm not suggesting that we switch terms, but as far as the way you're using the word supernatural, if we're going back to Latin and Greek roots, would it also be accurate to describe that thing as extra natural or outside of?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify as far as whether you were saying, and also there's this thing that is above and greater, and it's got, golden pixies or whatever. So because I've had that argument too many times this week.
I would define the supernatural to be that which is not part of the natural world. And so we can actually use that definition very, very well, right? We live in a natural world. So if you were to show me a thing in this natural world, right, we can investigate it.
Yeah.
Until the time that we, if we can't see it and we don't know anything about it, we can't investigate it.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I can look at fiction and say, hey, in the world of Harry Potter, right, Wingardium Leviosa is a spell that they use that is able to break, the what we understand as reality, and they're able to do these things that are not in accordance with the reality we know. And so by that definition, they would be supernatural. We're talking about things and using that definition in a way that works, while also showing that so long as we live in a natural world, we should be able to find natural explanations for things. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I would actually even add a caveat to that, but I'm not sure that it will come up in this conversation, so I can leave it out. But
well, he wanted to say that science cannot investigate. I say science can investigate. It just doesn't get results when you try and investigate the supernatural, because science is based in the natural world, and you can't relate the two because they're separated. So science can investigate the supernatural. It cannot gain any results that we are able to observe and perceive.
Actually, I disagree with that, and this was the caveat I was going to bring up. So there's the show Supernatural, which has demons and a lot of allusions to, I'm going to say the words Christian mythology here. When I say the word mythology, I do not mean, and therefore it is false. I just mean it is, elaborate stories, etc., right? So, for example, at one point I had a sweatshirt that said the man, the myth, the legend in my name that I got as a gift. I wouldn't use that sweatshirt to say that I don't exist in the same way that I wouldn't describe Christian mythology using the word mythology to mean that it doesn't exist. I'm just going the extra mile not to make this a contentious call, because the last call definitely went that way. So the show Supernatural has lots of sort of magic in it, but I think that it is misnamed. I think that it should be called really cool new natural stuff, because at the point at which you can create a magic detector with means of magic, or even reliably replicate ways of breaking what we currently understand as the fundamental laws of physics, I would say you have added to the human, the amount of human knowledge about the natural world.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
But
can I present a premise of mine?
Hold on. Before you do, Kevin, we're about 5 minutes into this conversation, and I don't know if this is what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So before we fill up all of your time, then I want to make sure that this is what you want to talk about while you're talking to us.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to lighten up on Billy. You guys get a second-hand opinion for someone who's been listening to the whole deal, and just wanted to make light that this is my observation on what he believed, and maybe it's different. And I found out that it's different from what you guys believe. So
Cheers.
We have 3 different observations in a period of two callers.
Yeah, dig it. Well, Jamie and I hardly agree on much when it comes to that kind of stuff. So 4.
That's because Eric is usually wrong.
And Eric is more patient outside of the show, I promise.
Yeah, I'm pretty patient everywhere.
Kevin.
That was a joke.
I have in the notes that you wanted to talk about how the transition from theism to atheism affects different groups of people.
Yes.
I also, as a quick aside, I also have in the notes that you are a theist. Is that correct?
Yeah, I brought it up last week. I was born and raised Jewish.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
I don't have any centered belief in a God that is watching over my shoulder kind of thing.
Okay.
But I still get some auras of spirituality throughout my life, and I don't discount that. Even though I live a very scientific life, I base everything that I do on science, so that
that's probably a good
get through the day.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
I know a lot of Jews that I know are the same way. They don't. They might not believe that Noah lived to be 950 years old, but they still believe in the ideology that the Torah teaches in respects to whatever stories they have. You learn something whether you read it once, twice, or 10 times. You learn something new about the same story. So that's why we read the Torah over and over every year. But back to my premise is, for instance, I see a lot of atheists, young atheists, who grew up in families who were religious, and as they go to college or grow up in their lives, they separate themselves from those churches or those views that the families had, and yet that kind of cult of personality that religions instill in their adolescence, they tend to carry on even though you might discount that there's a God or anything like that. It tends to make it seem more or less like they will act the same way as a church acts together, whether or not the belief is there, because they grew up in that way, that kind of cult of personality with the church.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example.
Okay, give us a specific example.
Yeah. So if I were to bring up, let's say, politics with an atheist that I maybe met at a bar talking or something, and we seem very cool and happy about the conversation, and I bring up a certain premise that kind of pushes them away, that cult of personality being in the church, they might not engage that debate independently. They might just kind of fall back onto premises or beliefs that they've heard from other people because they're either ignorant or impotent to make up their own premise on the spot. I
would actually disagree with that completely, and I think Jamie is too. Let's.
I actually just disagree with the description cult of personality. However, and also the way that you're referring to this, it appears to be you referring broadly to the class of people, young atheists that grew up in a religious household. So what I would say is, while this may be a thing that you have observed in people that you know that are young atheists, I would say that in many cases, religion, particularly in the United States, teaches bad modes of thinking. And I would also say that leaving the conclusion, a God exists, and leaving affiliation, I am an Episcopalian, does not remove the modes of bad thinking. Right?
So
it is not the same as being trained in skepticism.
We would define that as your epistemological toolbox, right? The tools that you use to understand the world around you. And so if you developed those from growing up in church, then I think that would probably fit what you're saying as the cult of personality, right? You use the best tools that you have at your disposal. I would say that if I'm presented with something that I've never heard before and I need to chew on it, I would absolutely need to say that I was ignorant of it. And even if I wasn't ignorant of it and I still hadn't come to a conclusion that I was comfortable with, I would be honest about that and say that I'm still chewing on it and I haven't come to a conclusion that I'm comfortable with, but I wouldn't fall into either ignorant or impotent, right? I would just
when I say
categorize
impotent,
that as
I don't
honest.
mean the medical impotence. I mean impotent is I attempt a task and I'm unable to finish it.
Yeah.
Kevin's doing my job on the show.
I would say that logic, and really giving it your best means that you got to take homework home. And so I wouldn't call that impotence. I'd call that honesty. I would be very skeptical of somebody who came up with a full logical, understanding of something on the spot.
Right.
Okay.
Right. For instance, an example of impotence was when Billy was confronted about this proving science or unable to prove supernatural, and he goes to this red herring where he says, "Well, I'm twice your age. You should, He didn't really say it, but he's implying, you should respect my opinion because I'm older than you. That's the.
Got it.
And that's the kind of impotence that I'm talking about, where people avoid answering a question because they feel unable to.
So I feel like we're
I actually
in
have
the
a
minutia,
response.
so let's definitely get through to the end so that we
I
can...
actually have a general response. I think that religious belief has almost nothing to do with it, as in terms of the conclusion about a God, right? So, in my view, it says you're a theist here, so I'm going to mention this, but it's not really the sticking point I want to get into, at least yet. I think that if you properly apply skepticism and have a sufficient level of scrutiny on evidence, it is what I did, and it led me to the conclusion that a God does not exist. Other than that process, a person's ability to think clearly, apply logic, or know about how effed the human brain is about understanding anything is... I don't think that it's helped by fundamentalist religious indoctrination that just says, don't think about it, don't question, whatever. However, I think that that's largely detached from whether or not you conclude that a God exists. And as in my experience, I see that everywhere.
That was a long general response.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. The premise isn't so much that.
Are we still on topic, or are we in the weeds? It feels like we never got to the thing you were talking about.
We're about halfway through where we're supposed to be, and I feel you guys are exactly caught up to where we need to be.
Cool. Mm-hmm. We are 15 minutes into a call that.
Well, the first 5 was about the previous one.
It doesn't. We're still on this call.
Yeah.
And us talking about the previous call and not getting to it is.
Are you guys? No.
We're doing our best to better monitor time, so the thing that happened to you last week doesn't happen again.
Yeah, we're keeping this call on the rails.
What was the second half of what you wanted to talk about?
Is that cult of personality, whether it's for an older person or a younger person, again, not having to be directly related to a belief in God or not, it exists in humanity and society. That is causing a lot of the younger generation to kind of be more stupid and rely on less exact facts. And I almost believe that I don't want to classify it as an atheist generation, but younger kids who are able to think for themselves as atheists, who grew up in a religion, they aren't really representing their intelligence the way that I think they could be, because they're just like regurgitating crap they see online. And that's a separate cult of personality, where atheism could be turning into like a religion in a sense. I call it a cult because it's not an established religion.
Okay,
but
cool. So what I would say is there's 2 things. One, I would say that cult of personality refers to a very specific social dynamic, and too. I agree with you. Everyone should be more skeptic.
That
However,
must be misrepresented.
one of the sentences you said in there, I firmly disagree with, which is you said, so they're relying on less good facts. Do you mean less reliable way of thinking or conclusions than they were, for example, if they were in a fundamentalist church? So, for example, a person that was in a fundamentalist church
Hold on,
and then
let him
leaves
answer.
and
Hold on,
then
you gave him the
begins
chance
to
to
believe,
answer. Let him answer.
and then believes
Yeah.
in horoscopes.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, sorry, I got a little distracted.
I do that.
An example I can use is my mother is a highly educated accountant. She's been working for many years with different businesses, high-end businesses. She grew up in Europe, and now she's starting to believe really weird stuff online as truth, things like conspiracy theories and such.
I'm sorry
Because
to hear that.
she's not using her logical side to think for herself. So she's succumbing to not a cult of personality, but let's just say a cult of conspiracy.
I think the word cult is not applicable.
It's really throwing me for a loop. I'm trying to mentally connect that to mental tool or cognitive tool.
Use a better substitute if you guys can.
Cognitive tool.
Is there a better word?
Cognitive tool or epistemological tool.
Okay.
Just
Epistemological tool.
that helps a lot.
Cult implies organization.
So, Kevin, I kind of want to investigate this a bit. Do you think that this is new?
In a sense of a transition from so many people living in a hard-locked religion-like lifestyle, let's say in the 50s, to now we have a lot of people being more independent and atheists. Does that translate to a new religion of atheism in a sense?
Hold on. I think that you tried to answer it, but I think that you, instead of responding to it, turned it into a question that neither I understand nor answers the question I asked you. So I'll go back, right, and try to include all of this here. You saying that this new generation that's just relying on regurgitating things that they saw on the internet or just spouting things that they saw but have not investigated, do you think this is a new phenomenon? Yes.
No, I don't.
Okay, so what's the problem? It seems like the more we recognize it, the better we'll be because we can actually account for it, right?
The impact we have today is greater because technology has made it much easier for information to spread. So comparing 150 years ago, the amount of information that was able to be spread and the impact it would have, it would take many generations. But now you can have an impact that can be done so in a couple days.
But that said, Kevin, people regurgitating crap that they heard and not investigating it goes back as long as humanity's been around. It's an issue that I agree with, but I would not accuse religion or lack thereof of being the issue. I would say that the more cognizant we are of the way that we behave, the more that we can account for it and try to do better. So that said, that would be the way that I would rebut your statement, is by saying it's kind of all of us. It's kind of always been that way, and we do our best to do better. So the time that we're in and what we're, it doesn't impact that.
Well, I guess I see it as a snowball gaining weight, rolling downhill.
But it's the same behavior, Kevin.
Yeah. Let me. I think you guys are pointing to different elements of this. I think that what he is saying is, look at the effect that technology has had vis-a-vis what I would describe as human nature being naturally not skeptical. And what you are saying is human nature has always been naturally not skeptical. Like, being skeptical is a skill that must be learned, and I have a be like native generally. Well, I mean, I don't.
I believe the universe is a ratio, and the only way we can observe that ratio is by comparing it to something. So we can stare at the moon, but unless I'm comparing parts of the moon to something I've already seen, I don't create a perception of that. So
Kevin,
there are blind observations and real observations, I guess.
You're saying that the universe is a ratio,
Everything that you perceive as a human being is a ratio because you have to compare it to something else.
We understand.
Okay,
We begin to understand. Would you say we begin to understand the unknown in terms of the known?
You can only compare what you don't know to something you do know. Otherwise,
Exactly.
it's a blind observation.
Then let's pull the word ratio out because that definitely confused things.
I would like to point out
we
that
are
we're shifting
20
the
minutes
topic.
And
I think
we
that's
have
a
other
good
callers
topic.
we want to get to. Kevin, I hope this has been fun. It's been fun for us.
Yes.
So take care, brother. And
feel free to call back next week because we also didn't address anything specifically that you believe about the supernatural or whatever, and I'd be happy to do that as well because you're an excellent caller.
Yep.